5-step crackdown on illegal immigration. Hundreds of additional staff to be deployed at a new unit to monitor small boats crossing the English Channel. President Zelensky claims that Ukrainian air defense systems have shot down 13 Iranian-made kamikaze drones that targeted the capital Kiev after explosions were heard in a central neighbourhood of the Ukrainian capital. Greek MEP Eva Kaili, at the centre of a corruption scandal, did not know of the existence of the cash found at her home, says her lawyer, hours after she was sacked as Vice President of Parliament. And former England all-rounder Andrew Flintoff airlifted to a hospital after suffering a car accident during the filming of an episode of the BBC show Top Gear. It's reported that his injuries are not life-threatening. UK inflation dropped to 10.7% in November from a 41-year high of 11.1%, but it remains in double digits amidst a cost of living crisis. According to the Office for National Statistics, one of the many reasons behind the drop in inflation rates is the slow rise in fuel prices. The latest released figures also point to the cost of food increasing somewhat more, and according to the ONS, the price of food and non-alcoholic drinks went up by 16.5% in November. A fall in the inflation rate comes as a relief to some households, but it still means prices are rising at a slower pace. October's overall inflation rate of 11.1% was the highest for 41 years. However, the Bank of England has warned inflation could top 13% this year, as it is expected to keep raising interest rates to try and control it. Well, for more on this, our correspondent Alex Isat sent us this report. Thanks for joining us. Slightly better news today that inflation is slightly reduced, but of course it still remains completely at a near 40-year high in that double-digit territory. So good news, but also there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think many are seeing this as potentially the peak of the high rate of inflation. That 40-year high, which pushed everything up, has been blamed on a number of factors, including the war in Ukraine. And if this is the peak, then it is only good news for the next year ahead. However, we're still not going to see prices come down anytime soon. And a lot of people are still waiting to hear on what the Bank of England will have to say tomorrow. They're apparently going to be potentially pushing up interest rates again. So there's been discussions about being 3.5%. And this is going to affect all of those that need the money now, because although interest rates are positive for savers, it won't be great for those who want to buy, it won't be good for businesses and for those who have mortgages as well. But if this is the peak and we are going to see some easing, then that can only be positive for the rest of us. Of course, that doesn't help people now in the winter as we go on. We still have issues with cost of living, and we've also got the fuel crisis that is still continuing when we can't really get the money that we need to pay for our bills. So there is still a lot of issues going on, and with borrowing from the government still at that huge high, we're still going to be looking to pay off that money in the future. So a slight positive, but it looks like this will just be a plateau for the short term.
Alex Isat, many thanks for now. In the UK, strikes are continuing throughout the approach to Christmas as the cost of living crisis has hit workers across various sectors. Railway workers are set to walk out today for a second day in a row, and Royal Mail staff are also set to start their industrial action. The first day of rail strikes left services at a very low running capacity, and coupled with heavy snowfall made it nearly impossible for road and air travel. Today, around half of rail lines are expected to be shut again. Meanwhile, support for continuing industrial action on the UK's train network remains amongst commuters.
Absolutely, completely get that. But, you know, I think there comes a time you have to stand up for yourself, and I think that's what they're doing. So I understand, and in a way I support them.
Obviously, it's really frustrating when you have to add extra time to your commute. But I mean, ultimately, I completely support their right to strike, and that they have their reasons for doing it. So I'm in favour of those. It's just unfortunate that it's disruptive as it is.
The UK has experienced a wave of industrial action on a scale not seen since the 1980s. UK nurses are set to walk out for the first time in their union's 106-year history over pay. Rail workers will hold another two-day strike from Friday, when they will be joined by bus drivers, highway workers and airport baggage handlers. Border Force staff checking passports at major airports, including Heathrow and Gatwick, will strike over Christmas. Well, for more on this, our correspondent Alex Isat joins us again from London. Alex, the strikes continue, the chaos continues. When will this ever end?
Well, that's a good question. How long is a piece of string? I don't think that anyone has the answer to that. Of course, today you can see that we're outside a delivery centre, Royal Mail, and the Postal Workers Union is striking today. Now, it's not all about pay. There's a lot of conversation about pay, but it's also about archaic working conditions. These strikers here said that they were asked to do parts of their job that they did not sign up for. That's carrying heavy packages, that's doing voluntary weekends and evening work as well. So it is all surrounding that pay packet that we keep hearing, but ultimately there are other issues that seem to be involving many of the unions. They do say that they really want to be pushing to help for the future of all of these industries, and the only way they can do that is by striking now. And of course it may be a convenience, and in fact many of the unions have apologised to everyone within the UK, business owners and personal as well, to say that they are sorry, but they want to try and do something so disruptive that they want to push the government into making these changes, which they say are fundamental. But it does seem to be slightly bringing the country to a slow grinding halt, and people are questioning some of the unions' actions. The RMT itself with the train strikes, people are getting extremely frustrated not being able to get to work. With the Royal Mail, people are asking, do we still need them? Do we still have this ability to send letters and parcels? We have it in other agencies, so do we need something like the Royal Mail, especially if they're going to be holding us all to account? But it does look like that the rest of December is still going to be full of strikes. We are hopeful that when the Cobra meeting happens later with the government, that they may start to push forward with the nurses' strike. They still have the rest of today to potentially stop that nurses' strike happening tomorrow. But with all of the other strikes that are going on, it won't feel like it's much of a win for the UK publication at all.
Alex Isat, many thanks for your insight there. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has announced a new deal with Albania in order to control the flow of immigrants from the country crossing the English Channel. In the last 2 years, the number of people arriving in England across the Channel has more than doubled. According to government figures, Albanians account for the highest number of people arriving by this route.
Early next year, we will introduce new legislation to make unambiguously clear that if you enter the UK illegally, you should not be able to remain here. Tackling this problem will not be quick. It will not be easy, but it is the right thing to do. Because we cannot persist with a system that was designed for a different era. We have to stop the boats, and this government will do what must be done.
Sunak announced a new 5-point strategy for dealing with illegal immigration. Hundreds of additional staff will be deployed to a new unit to monitor small boats crossing the English Channel. The new plan also covers housing 10,000 asylum seekers in less expensive accommodation than hotels. He also pledged more staff and funding for the National Crime Agency to tackle organised immigration crime in Europe. It also includes plans to fast-track the return of Albanian asylum seekers and clearing the initial backlog of almost 150 asylum cases by the end of next year. It's been 8 years.
And lastly, we will change how we process Albanian illegal migrants.
It's been 8 years since the Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 disappeared. The flight had 239 passengers on board, and there have been many theories and questions raised regarding the mystery of the missing flight. And 8 years later, the story continues to unfold. A new piece of evidence now suggests that the aircraft could have been deliberately downed by its pilots in an act of mass murder-suicide. According to a report, the discovery of the flight debris signals that the landing gear was down when it hit the ocean. The report by Richard Godfrey, who is a British engineer, and Blaine Gibson, an American MH370 pilot, said that the plane was deliberately crashed. They have concluded that the flight was in high speed and divided to ensure that the aircraft broke into pieces. The report further claims that the crash was anything but a soft landing. The debris, which is being examined, was found at the house of a Madagascan fisherman who found it on a beach in 2017. The fisherman, who kept the landing gear door at his home for 5 years, was not aware of its significance. His wife used the door as a washing board. Across Madagascar, a total of 19 chunks of debris have been found. The theory proposed by Godfrey and Gibson is based on the 4 quasi-parallel gashes on the door, which they believed were caused by one of the plane's 2 engines disintegrating on impact. Experts have also said that pilots usually don't lower their landing gear during an emergency landing on water, as it increases the chance of aircraft breaking into several pieces. It also increases the chances of the plane sinking quickly. A similar incident occurred in 2015 when the co-pilot of Germanwings Flight 9525 deliberately crashed the aircraft. Andreas Lubitz, who had been previously treated for suicidal tendencies, was declared unfit to work, but kept this information away from his employer. In Ukraine, Kyiv's air defence system shot down 13 drones owned by Russia. According to the mayor of Kyiv, the drones shot down were Iranian-made drones. According to the Kyiv administration, 2 administrative buildings were also damaged. Explosions were heard in a central neighbourhood of Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. Meanwhile, in Bakhmut, Ukrainians leaving the region say constant Russian shelling has forced residents to shelter in basements and sleep in the bitter cold. The United States seems to have agreed to an urgent request from Ukraine. Official sources say Washington is now poised to send a battery of its feared Patriot missiles to the war-torn nation. This will provide Ukraine with much needed air defence, which its leaders have been desperately seeking for months. The much-awaited approval from Washington is likely to come later this week. Official sources say the announcement could come as soon as Thursday. Ukraine's top leadership pressed Western leaders on Monday to provide more advanced weapons to help their country in its war with Russia. The Patriots would be the most advanced surface-to-air missile system that the West has provided to Ukraine to help repel Russian aerial attacks.
Right now, again, I don't have anything to announce, but we're going to continue to adapt. We're going to continue to stay flexible, and we're going to continue to work with Ukraine to ensure they're getting what they need.
The defunct FTX founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, has been charged with fraud and accused of violating campaign finance laws. Prosecutors are calling the case the biggest financial fraud in American history. Fried's lawyers had applied for bail, but a judge in the Bahamas has denied the request and sent him to correctional facility instead.
Federal prosecutors on Tuesday charged Sam Bankman-Fried, the 30-year-old founder of defunct cryptocurrency exchange FTX, with perpetrating what they called, quote, one of the biggest financial frauds in American history.
Bankman-Fried and his co-conspirators stole billions of dollars from FTX customers. He used that money for his personal benefit, including to make personal investments and to cover expenses and debts of his hedge fund, Alameda Research.
The same day, regulators with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission filed a lawsuit alleging Bankman-Fried used client and investor money to enrich himself.
He then misused those funds to make undisclosed venture investments, lavish real estate purchases, and large political donations.
The criminal charges and civil lawsuits come a day after Bankman-Fried was arrested at his home in Nassau, Bahamas, on a U.S. warrant. He appeared in a Bahamas court on Tuesday with his attorneys indicating the former CEO might fight extradition to the U.S. Bankman-Fried has apologized to customers and acknowledged oversight failings at FTX, but said he does not personally think he has any criminal liability. Before his arrest, Bankman-Fried was scheduled to testify before U.S. lawmakers on the House Financial Services Committee. The hearing went ahead with FTX's new CEO, John Ray, as the main witness.
The FTX group's collapse appears to stem from absolute concentration of control in the hands of a small group of grossly inexperienced and unsophisticated individuals.
Ray was tapped to lead the defunct exchange last month and oversee the bankruptcy. He told members of Congress that FTX lost $8 billion of client money and said he'd never seen a firm with so few internal controls or so little oversight.
They use QuickBooks, a multi-billion-dollar company using QuickBooks.
QuickBooks?
QuickBooks. Nothing against QuickBooks, very nice tool, just not for a multi-billion-dollar company.
The U.S. Congress is looking at crafting legislation to rein in a loosely regulated crypto industry. FTX filed for bankruptcy on November 11th, leaving an estimated 1 million customers and other investors facing losses in the billions of dollars. The collapse reverberated across the crypto world and sent Bitcoin and other digital assets plummeting.
Lionel Messi will have one final shot at that elusive World Cup title after he inspired Argentina to a clinical 3-0 win over the 2018 runners-up Croatia to reach their 6th World Cup final. The two-time world champions will now either face holders France or this side of the tournament, Morocco, in the final on Sunday. The game was billed as the last dance between Lionel Messi and Croatia's superstar Luka Modric, two legends gunning for the ultimate prize. But the Argentine got the better of his Croatian opponent. Messi drew first blood in the 34th minute, smashing home from the penalty spot following a foul on Manchester City striker Julian Alvarez. This was Messi's 11th World Cup goal, and he's now Argentina's all-time leading goalscorer in the history of the tournament. Well, Alvarez doubled the lead 5 minutes later with a brilliant solo run through the heart of the Croatian defence. And the Argentinians didn't take their foot off the gas in the second half as they dashed any hopes of a Croatian comeback. Once again, it was the 22-year-old Alvarez who found the back of the net to score the third goal. It was Messi, though, who tricked his way past Croatian defender Joško Gvardiol on the byline before sliding the ball back to Alvarez for an easy finish.
It's very difficult what we have done because all the games since the loss to Saudi Arabia in the first group game have been like finals for us, and that puts a huge burden on us mentally to treat every game like a final because we knew that if we didn't win, it would make things difficult for us. So we've already played 5 finals in a row, and here's hoping that the next one ends the same way.
Argentina fans spilled out of the Lusail Stadium after the match as they dreamed alongside Messi that this could finally be the year the fabled star lifts the World Cup trophy. Fans sang songs of Messi and Argentine legend Diego Maradona as they celebrated the win in the shadow of the massive arena that was packed with nearly 90,000 fans.
No, todavía no caigo que estamos en la final del mundo. Es una locura. Empezamos con el pie izquierdo, pero ahora estamos en la final del mundo. Una locura, no se puede explicar con nada. Solamente Lionel Messi lo puede explicar, con él. Él nada más lo puede explicar.
Back home, the fans were ecstatic after the national team's clinical performance. Thousands of supporters thronged Buenos Aires' famous obelisk monument in sky blue and white. Messi masks, painted faces, flags and a Diego Maradona lookalike were all spotted amongst the crowd as the Argentina faithful partied long into the night after their triumph in Qatar. The Cambridge Dictionary has changed the definition of a man and a woman. This is being done in order to include a third category. That's people who do not identify with the sex they were assigned at birth. Under the updated version, a man is now defined as an adult who lives and identifies as a male, though they may have been a different sex at birth. Meanwhile, a woman is described as an adult who lives and identifies as a female, despite possibly having a different sex at birth. However, the long-standing descriptions are still there, which outlines that sex and gender go hand in hand. A spokesperson for the Cambridge Dictionary has said that the editors changed the definition of a woman in October after carefully studying the usage patterns of the word woman, and concluded that the latest description of how a woman is defined should be used by the learners of English to further support their understanding of how the language is used. The new descriptions are now being criticised by social media users. Taking to Twitter, some wrote, "Remember, if you can control the language, you can control the crowd." Another user wrote that the Cambridge Dictionary is only the latest, further saying that if we don't stop them from erasing women, our civilization is not going to make it. Meanwhile, a UK-based group in Bristol, leading the campaign against transphobia, hailed the decision as fantastic news.
Social communication with people, and both we can manage the communication.
Well, that's all from your WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Oliver Regan, and this is WION.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at WION.